either just to some mines we really shouldn't have. FanTaSy now has a dropship out, but I think mines actually spotted that. But yeah, not too much damage done by FanTaSy there. Overall, just trying to plant down some tanks and start on the production buildings. Excuse me. But I believe Leta would just produce some vultures to make that a non-factor. But FanTaSy still having that one single dropship out. There is a Wraith, though, in play to try to counter that just in case it comes in. Leta now a lot of vultures. Again, going to move out north. We're going to see what he manages to do with that. FanTaSy coming in with a dropship. This is going to get spotted. The Wraith is going to start firing at it. But I think the dropship, yeah, is going to drop his payload. Is going to be able to do this. Several vultures coming in. 4 vultures. No, 3 vultures to start planting off a few mines. Take out a couple of SCVs. Dropship instantly going to fly back. Probably going to get shoved and taken out. Even more mines that are being planted down. Vultures coming in from Leta, and they're going to be able to completely prevent this. But FanTaSy, he has to be really happy just about doing this little bit of harassment, sacrificing a few vultures to come in, do some damage. Of course, the dropship is maybe a little bit too much of a sacrifice, not something you want to give, so he's most likely not going to go for this again, knowing that there's a Wraith in play that could kill his dropships. But still doing a little bit of harassment, preventing that from happening. Delaying lane as much as he can, putting down a base at the 1 o'clock position now, is a little bit behind. Leta adding in 2 more factories, so he's going to have a lot more troop production. FanTaSy at this point still at 4, still has that 1 dropship out, has a few tanks on the field alongside vultures. Leta with a slightly superior force, though. You can see his huge vulture count. Both players having speed, I believe, at this point. Vulture speed, I believe. Yeah. Now, Leta going to move out a little bit, going to put some tanks outside of his natural expansion on his ridge. Still has a 1-row Wraith waiting for dropships to come out. FanTaSy just moving around, planting down mines, everything, everywhere, expecting perhaps some forces, trying to catch some forces off guard. Not going to work against vultures, of course, because they float. But Leta now actually going to go with a dropship out, actually going to attack from the lower right. We're going to see whether FanTaSy, I don't think FanTaSy actually has anything to spot this, so he could be actually fairly damaging. FanTaSy still has a lot of vultures running around. We're going to see whether those are actually to run back to defense position. FanTaSy now actually moving a little bit south, meeting some vultures there. The dropship actually is going to be able to drop on this main here, completely unharassed. 4 vultures going to start by dropping down. FanTaSy going to respond to this by actually moving down in a huge minefield. A lot of SCVs going to be pulled off the line, some of them killed. Not too many forces coming to defend. 1 single tank there, probably going to be able to help defend this. No mines for the vultures. Yeah, okay, 1 mine goes down, does not take out the tank though, but are still 1 vulture there, not going to be able to manage too much, but still pretty decent counter harass for Leta. Did not lose his dropship, lost all of his vulture, did manage to take out several SCVs, almost took out a tank. Leta now with a sizable force of tanks, a few vultures to help support, actually going to move on north. Both players have pretty much the same amount of forces, although FanTaSy has a couple of Wraiths out on the field. Probably going to go to hunt down that dropship. Both players have a sizable number of tanks, a lot of vultures. FanTaSy going to actually intercept these tanks and vultures with a huge number of his own vultures. Tanks are going to siege up. Scan's probably going to go off fairly soon against all those mines. Some mines hitting, not doing too much. Scan's going off against the other tank line. Leta has a lot more tanks than FanTaSy does in the defender position in the middle, so FanTaSy just going to have to rely on the range that he's far enough away to really do something now, being also turrets being planted out everywhere outside. Leta again trying to do some harassment at 1 o'clock this time with vultures in time for FanTaSy to really counter that. So yeah, Leta's still just at the moment just holding the middle, I believe, just trying to put up a perimeter, trying to hold a position so he can feel safe in putting down more bases and trying to prevent FanTaSy from moving in and running around with those vultures. That's really what Leta needs to do right now. He has, I don't believe he has as large a number of vultures, so he really needs to prevent Leta from running around with his, bypassing his army and getting into the side of his bases. Barracks floating around for Leta alongside a Wraith. Going to start Peter up with our Wraiths now coming in 3 to support and take out the 1 single Wraith that was attacking the tanks there. Engineering Bay also now in the air floating around because Leta is putting down air turrets to try to counter some aerial forces. Leta now, FanTaSy now going to start attacking with those Wraiths at the tanks, but I think Leta actually has a Goliath there somewhere, but not in position to this. 3 Wraiths are actually going to start taking out a lot of tanks, doing a pretty good job. There, they take out if they all attack 1 single tank, of course the Wraiths are going to be able to do quite a large amount of damage. And now FanTaSy moving down to the lower left. Leta does have the 1 single Rage, does have a lot of tanks there. Scan's going off, he tries to attack and tries to defend it there. Now the Wraiths are all taken down. FanTaSy loses all of his Wraiths, but does manage to take out quite a decent number of tanks. 3, I think. I definitely saw him take out 2. I think by that point he should have taken out 2, maybe even should have taken out maybe 2 more. Scan's going off, and FanTaSy has now abandoned the attack at the lower left. He doesn't want to attack upper ridge. He does have the weapons 1 upgrade, I don't know quite if Leta has the upgrades going for him yet or not. I haven't really noticed that yet. He has a lot of dropships. 4 dropship at this point. He's going to go full on dropship delay. Oh, FanTaSy going to move down here at the force at the right side of the middle, surrounding all of these tanks with mines, sacrificing several vultures to completely clean this up, moving out down with his own small number of tanks. Leta trying to establish a base at the inside 5 o'clock, I believe. FanTaSy probably going to spot that, has some tanks. They're going to be dropped upon, though. Leta's going to be able to completely clean this out, but FanTaSy doing a great job there, cleaning up a rather large tank line. Has even more forces pouring down, a lot of vultures followed by a lot of tanks. There are dropships in play, so he has to be careful, but he doesn't have a lot of Goliaths, doesn't believe he has any Goliaths, and he's 1 o'clock position, could be very vulnerable. Leta is actually going to go for that position, not seeing any turrets. The odd tanks and vultures in position to support Leta, does cancel his attack, doesn't want to drop right on defensive forces. FanTaSy again running around with vultures, managing to just round some tanks, moving in with his own tanks, and just doing a great job. Has a Wraith attacking some dropships, flies out just before Goliath drop down and attack. FanTaSy finally has his own, just 2 dropships for him so far compared to Leta's 4, so he's not going to be able to be as maneuverable. But he has that Wraith. He's trying to slowly rebuild his Wraith number, and he has, I believe, upgrades on Leta. So in that regard, he's definitely in a pretty good position. Leta adding in more facts, 7, I believe, at this point. FanTaSy's still at 6. So yeah, turrets not being added in by both players. FanTaSy gonna drop on right on top of Leta. Loses, I believe, a dropship. Well, actually, no, I don't think he lost the dropship. Oh, did a great job of dropping there. Completely took out all those forces. Now Leta just still trying to take down a mode, trying to keep a safe position for his inside 5 o'clock, or whatever third base that he's trying to take. And just trying to hold the ridge here. You think if he manages to do that, he'll be in a pretty good shape. He also needs a slightly larger force, I believe, so he can keep some forces out on the ground alongside moving other forces. Really think if he manages to take out one of FanTaSy's bases, he's going to be in a pretty good position. Of course, the same can be said for FanTaSy. Leta now going to try to establish his far inside 5 o'clock. I believe that has, yeah, that does indeed have a gas. The straight up in the middle inside 5 o'clock and in the middle inside 1 o'clock have been stripped of gas. Instead they have, instead of 3 mineral patches, they have 6 mineral patches, but they have been stripped of gas. Not quite as gas heavy this map here. So still just very standard dropship play from both players. Not really going for anything funky so far. I believe if one player decides to stray, it could be a lot of trouble. As you saw in the Nada Iris matchup, Nada strayed from the norm, went for 3 starports, went a lot of wraiths. That really ended up backfiring. He didn't utilize the forces that he needed to. So if one player decides to stray from the norm here, he's really going to have to do something spectacular with it. But another thing about it, if one of the players would stray from the norm, I believe it's these two. These players are nothing if predictable, or nothing if unpredictable. I don't know. I keep getting these English sayings wrong all the time. I'm not a native, goddammit. So both players, yeah, just petering at each other so far. Both players have a pretty sizable force. Leta has a slight maneuverability advantage. FanTaSy trying to take his 4th as well at the far left inside, let's call it inside 10 o'clock rather, to make it a little bit more simpler. Inside 10 o'clock rather than inside 11 o'clock. You can see this base right here, inside 10 o'clock. And he has a lot of forces surrounding that, trying to defend, trying to put up a perimeter. Leta now moving out with some vultures towards the base, trying to establish the 9 o'clock position. But FanTaSy has a few tanks, several tanks outside the ridges as well. Mines being planted everywhere by Leta, not being too effective with those though. I think Leta's not going to be able to manage too much. Builds up one single air trap, but he has, whoa, look at that, 7 dropship, 1 instantly gets taken out. So Leta is forced to plant the forces on the 9 o'clock and hold at a far position, but he has them actually moving in towards the main. There are some turrets there. Has to be very careful there. Going to move towards there. He probably didn't drop all of his forces. Not going to be forced to move back to the turrets in response to awesome, due to turrets and dropships being in there in response. Losing visuals here a little bit, slightly bad reception. And Leta getting all of his dropships, completely surprised, and his command center was floating there also in horrible position. Oh my freaking god, I apologize about all the turbulence that is in the video, but you just can't help it. Oh my god, the Leta lost so many dropships. Now FanTaSy going to drop down completely on here. There's a lot of tanks. There's a lot of Goliaths moving in here. Still those drops in the air. Again, going to be attacked by the Goliaths. He's going to fly off the last one. No! So gets taken down. Leta loses his entire aerial force. Some of those dropships definitely had forces inside them. Loses all of it, so Leta now completely vulnerable as all hell, not going to be able to reinforce his forces. Of course, the weakness of a Terran army, the weakness particularly of a Terran ground army, is they're immensely invulnerable. Those vultures, the only thing they're vulnerable enough, immensely immovable, non-movable. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, anyway, Leta can't move his dudes around, okay? Because it doesn't have the freaking dropships anymore. FanTaSy still has the dropships around, so he's going to be able to, as long as he keeps out of the reach of those Goliaths, he's going to be able to go around. He's going to plant down the 9 o'clock base, I believe, and going to be able to take a slight economic advantage now. Oh, losing those dropships. Not 7 drops.